The Harvest of Fear Chapter 1. Seeds of Despair. The year was 2032, and the world was on the brink of an unimaginable disaster. In a remote factory in China, nestled among towering smokestacks and dense fog, workers tended to the world's food supply. But something was amiss. The air was thick with unease, and whispers spread through the workforce like wildfire. Li Wei, a seasoned worker in the factory, approached a row of tomatoes that gleamed unnaturally under the fluorescent lights. They had grown to an enormous size, their surfaces smooth and almost translucent. These tomatoes, Lee muttered to himself, they look alive. He reached out to touch one, but before his fingers could graze the surface, the tomato lurched toward him. Its vine-like tendrils lashed out, wrapping around his wrist and pulling him in. Lee's scream was cut short as he was dragged into the shadows, the tomato's soft flesh engulfing him around the world. Similar scenes unfolded. People were vanishing, swallowed by the very food they once relied on. Panic spread as reports of attacks by cannibalistic vegetables flooded the news. In the United States, fear gripped the nation as the disappearances began to affect even the most secure government facilities. Chapter 2. The Oval Office. President Kamala Harris sat at the head of a large conference table in the White House, her expression grim as she listened to the latest briefing. The room was filled with top military officials, scientists, and advisors, all trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding across the globe. "What's the latest report?" Kamala demanded, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "People are disappearing all over U.S. territories, and we need answers." A scientist stood, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Madam President, it's the vegetables. They're attacking people. The tomatoes are the most aggressive, while the corn, it tortures its victims before finishing them off." Kamala's eyes widened in disbelief. "This can't be real. What could possibly cause such a mutation?" The scientist shook his head. "We don't know yet, but we're working on it. There's something unnatural at play here." Kamala leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. "We need to find the source of this. If someone is behind this, they've declared war on humanity." The Harvest of Fear. Chapter 3. The Watermelon Conspiracy. In a high-tech lab deep within the White House, scientists worked around the clock to uncover the truth behind the attacks. The room buzzed with activity as data was analyzed, samples were tested, and theories were formed. Dr. Elena Torres, a leading expert in bioengineering, stared at a monitor displaying a complex graph. "We've analyzed the bees' disappearance, and it all started when watermelon seeds were planted. The seeds are emitting some kind of pheromone that's driving the bees away." Kamala stood beside her, her arms crossed. "But why? What's the connection?" Dr. Torres hesitated before replying. "It's more than just the bees. The watermelons are absorbing something from the soil, something unnatural. We believe it's a toxin, introduced by an external force." Kamala's face hardened. "China." The Harvest of Fear. Chapter 4. The Revelation. In a secure room filled with surveillance screens and intelligence reports, Kamala received news that shook her to the core. An agent, pale and sweating, delivered the message. "Madam President, our intel confirms it. Donald Trump, who fled the U.S. years ago, is now the dictator of China. We have reason to believe he's behind this entire nightmare." Kamala clenched her fists. "Trump, I should have known. This is his revenge. But why weaponize vegetables?" Dr. Torres, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "It's psychological warfare, turning something essential like food into a weapon. It's genius in its madness." Kamala's mind was made up. "We need to stop this, whatever it takes." The Harvest of Fear. Chapter 5. The Weakness. Back in the lab, there was a breakthrough. Dr. Torres rushed into the Oval Office, her face flushed with excitement. "Madam President, we've found a solution. pH 8 water. It kills the mutated vegetables on contact." Kamala's eyes lit up with hope. Prepare our forces. We're going to flush out every last one of those cannibal crops. The Harvest of Fear, Chapter 6. The battle begins across the U.S. The military mobilized, armed with hoses and water cannons filled with pH-8 water. The once peaceful farmlands had turned into battlegrounds, with rows of corn and tomatoes wreaking havoc on small towns. That I in one such town. Soldiers fought desperately against the onslaught of bloodthirsty vegetables. Tomatoes launched themselves at people, while the corn stalks ensnared and tortured anyone who came too close. But with each blast of pH-8 water, the monstrous plants withered and died. Their threat neutralized. Kamala watched the scenes unfold on a large screen in the Situation Room, a sense of relief washing over her. "We will not be defeated by our food," she muttered to herself. The Harvest of Fear. Chapter 7. The Final Escape. As the world began to recover from the horrors of the cannibal crops, one man remained unaccounted for. In the frozen tundra near the North Pole, a lone figure stood, gazing out over the icy expanse. Donald Trump, now a fugitive from justice, grinned sinisterly. "This isn't over, Kamala," he whispered to the wind. "My next harvest will be even deadlier." The Harvest of Fear. Epilogue. A chilling future. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the last of the cannibalistic vegetables were eradicated. But the scars of the terror they had wrought remained, a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. That I in the quiet moments of the night, President Kamala Harris couldn't help but wonder, when will the next attack come, and who will be there to stop it?